Happening in Parliament. I'm joined in studio by Thokozani Chilenga-Butao from the University of the Witwatersrand. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Swearing in is done. What can we expect that sixth Parliament to look like? And
I think the sixth Parliament will definitely be one where there is more accountability, as the EFF has said, and we've seen because of the rise of the numbers that the EFF has experienced in the last election, there'll definitely be more accountability on the National Assembly floor. But what we should really be looking at is whether there will be accountability in the actual work of parliamentary committees where these members will be. So we saw that we lost Themba Godi in the Scopa Committee, and so will these members within the EFF but also within other opposition parties be able to carry on that spirit of accountability and ensuring that whether it's public finance or procurement, there is accountability within the work of parliamentary committees.
Mm-hmm. One of the big stories that came out around that parliamentary swearing in is Deputy President David Mabuza saying, according to the ANC, that in light of the Integrity Commission and the report thereof, he'd like to postpone his swearing in. Do you think that's what happened?
Based on reports in newspapers over the weekend, there seems to be some brokering that's going on behind the scenes. And it's also interesting that he said that he'd like to, or effectively he's going to subject himself to the Integrity Committee. And it's strange because up until now we've been asking, is the Integrity Committee working? So who is actually moving behind the actions of the Integrity Committee? And we need to be aware of what has now motivated him to go through that process. If you remember last year when he was questioned in Parliament and asked about the allegations of corruption in Mpumalanga, he said, if you have a case against me, go to the police. And now the ANC Integrity Committee is saying, well, here we are, maybe not the police, but will you answer to these allegations? So it's interesting that now he's willing to be subjected to that committee, and we have to ask who is bringing down that heavy hand within a committee that we previously saw as defunct.
Would we apply the same kind of questions around the role of Nomvula Mokonyane, or is the fact that she is mourning the passing of her husband and dealing with family affairs sufficient for that postponement of her, or the fact that she is not going to be sworn in?
I think it is sufficient. Grief is an important reason not to be sworn in. It's an important reason for anyone not to show up to work. The question is, will the ANC continue to hold some sort of position for her? Or after this period has passed, will there still be some sort of accountability, especially given the allegations that have come out from, is it the State Capture Commission of Inquiry?
Let's go to the Democratic Alliance now. They are saying that the MPs that have gone to Parliament are more racially representative because the majority of their MPs in the last Parliament were white men, I believe, and then followed by white women and so on. So are we going to see that change in the makeup of MPs have any effects?
It might have an effect in terms of representation, but as we've just heard from the spokesperson of the DA, they seem to still be punting this idea that it's based on merit. I'm sure they are taking what a lot of South Africans have said seriously, though, about representation and the DA, and whether it's anti-black, whether it actually realizes that representation does matter and not just merit.
The economic freedom fighters might have been the biggest disruption story of the fifth Parliament. We heard Julius Malema earlier on speaking to my colleague Budalani Philip and saying they're going to continue in pretty much the same manner that they have been.
We can always rely on the EFF to be consistent in that regard. But what I think we want to see as people who voted is, will those disruptions lead to tangible change? I don't think people want to see a chaotic Parliament anymore for the sake of seeing chaos, but keeping people accountable and making sure that whatever changes people have voted on the basis of, those changes do take place. So I think the EFF at some point has to tread carefully. Are those disruptions leading to changes in areas of the state, of public policy, or are they simply just disruptions which we can all get tired of?
A party that we know is going to go through some changes is the IFP. Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the oldest parliamentarian at 91 years old. Got some young blood in there with people like Mkhulelo Hlengwa and saying that he's going to step down. What's the role of the IFP going to be going forward, do you think?
I think the role of the IFP will continue to represent their constituency, most definitely. But I think the IFP now has to show that they're also a national party and not just a party for particular interests. So we need to ensure that we keep a check on that as the voters and the electorate.
We've also seen the Freedom Front Plus increasing the amount of seats that they have. There's been around the world an increase in very nationalist sentiment, right-wing sentiment coming out. Freedom Front Plus has said they're not, an extreme right-wing party. They're not only protecting white interests in South Africa. Is that correct?
I think that remains to be seen, but I don't think it is accurate. I mean, even their sloganeering with Slaan terug, everything around their campaigning does not seem to represent a party that is trying to get a broad or diverse range of people to support them. So if they do claim that they're a party that is for everyone, they do need to make those strides in all communities and show that their interests are aligned with a diverse population and not just with right-wing sentiments.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Thokozani Chilenga-Butao from the University of the Witwatersrand, taking a look at that 6th Parliament. Now, the election of the